golden nameplate shimmers in the evening sun, and as it is shifted, it reads a name that is written in a tall black font. It says, Elijah Jin. Elijah is a tall Chinese-American man with reddish-brown eyes and silky brown hair, with smooth but wrinkled skin. He stands around 6 foot tall, in a sharp black and white suit with dark leathery loafers. He works as a lawyer in San Diego, and was recently engaged, and plans to settle down and start a family after the summer. He was a very intelligent man, but arrogant and ruthless. He had many traits that made him disliked by other colleagues. Elijah did everything for the matter of his career, and was easily persuaded by money, making some dangerous people be let free, and a lot of questionable cases on his record. But overall, he was a skilled and intelligent man with a sustainable business and a promising future. Elijah adjusts the nameplate so it fits perfectly at the edge of his redwood desk. He was a perfectionist and adjusted everything to his liking. He was sat in his glass window office on top of a tall skyscraper in San Diego. Elijah grabbed the half-filled glass cup standing on the desk with a single hand and lifted it up to his face. The translucent lubricant began to pour it down his mouth slowly. The water quickly soothed Elijah's throat before the last flow of liquid touched his mouth and fell into his gaping throat. He returned the glass cup to its place on the table with a thud, before adjusting it carefully into its original place. All of a sudden, a knock could be heard on his office door. "Come in," exclaimed Elijah. "Good afternoon, sir. I have some rather unfortunate news for you today. Mr. Henry Wu passed away in his hospital bed this morning," said Elijah's secretary as she entered the room. "Oh dear, we were never that close, but I haven't seen him for weeks," said Elijah. "I'm sorry for your loss, sir, but Mr. Wu has given you these files and a small deposit of money, which should be transferred later," said the woman as she placed the box gently onto the desk. "Thank you for your words. I will talk to you if I need anything more," said Elijah as he reluctantly looked at the box. "You're welcome, sir. I'll be downstairs if you need anything," said the woman as she went back through the door and closed it silently. As the footprint slowly faded, Elijah stood up from his desk and peered over at the box. The box was a dark tan colour with a few black stains and a small label with letters reading, "Files." Elijah was annoyed at the sight of the box. He never knew Henry well, never even met him at all. But all he gets from the will are some measly papers? He was sure Henry had loads of money. He did used to work at both old parks where the dinosaurs were first brought back into the world. Elijah grabbed the box and gently moved it to the edge of the table. The box dragged the glass cup before knocking it off the table and smashing it onto the floor. Elijah turned and sighed in frustration. As he bent, he bashed against the box and sent it crashing to the ground. The once clean floor was now littered with glass shards and files everywhere. Elijah looked up at the ceiling and grunted in annoyance. He returned his gaze to the floor, and a particular file caught his attention. It was a large folder labelled "Confidential." Elijah adjusted his tie sharply before crouching down and picking the folder up, dragging it over to his desk. He sat down in his chair before tucking it in place, and placed the folder neatly in front of him. He lifted a hand and brushed it against the table before landing it on the file. His hand hooked around the front page and opened the folder with precision. He took out the first page, and it read, "Confidential Papers, Dr. Henry Wu, Chief Geneticist." Elijah rolled his eyes and turned the page. Elijah glanced over the paper. He was intrigued by the name Sauna. He had heard of that place before, but why was this handed over to him, of all people, and in a cardboard box? Trudon, aren't those the invasive species in Costa Rica? They've been breeding for years undetected. Wu made them, but how did they get to the mainland? Henry was an extremely smart man, but sending all of this to a person he barely knew? And on top of all of that, I'm a lawyer. What was wrong with you, you genetic shitshow? Elijah closed the folder and placed his hand on top of it and breathed heavily in and out. I'm a businessman, not a scientist. What use do I have of this? If Henry really wanted this to be out in the public, he could have done it when he was still around. After he fixed that locust fiasco, he's been laying low. I guess he was spreading his last days peacefully. Still, doesn't add up. Me, of all people? Elijah put the folder back into the box and then began to clear up the rest and stacked it all neatly in the box, avoiding the shards of glass scattered across the floor. I can't even remember when I met Dr. Wu. I was young, but it must have been on that day, in the park. Elijah stopped. He was stiff as a board. He looked visibly distraught, as if he had just unlocked a secret memory of something that he tried to hide most. Something did happen to him. His hatred and views of these creatures started at a certain point in time. It wasn't something he had a choice over. He was influenced, not by his own will, but by chaos. Elijah's father, David Jin, was close with Dr. Henry Wu. They studied side by side, a true friendship, until one day, Henry was offered a job in Jurassic Park. He dedicated his life to his work. Sometime in between, his father had met a beautiful lady and settled down, and had Elijah. He was a great man and an excellent scientist. Wu was shady and a dangerous man, engineering fabricated monsters again and again. God knows what else he did during the time up until Jurassic World collapsed. But that was the day it happened for Elijah. Elijah was with an older man running through Main Street of Jurassic World 14 years ago. Elijah was only a teen. His father grabbed his hand and led him through floods and floods of people, all running and screaming in the opposite direction. Elijah looked back and saw a pteranodon. It swooped by and Elijah snapped back into reality. He grabbed his head fiercely. "Damn it!" he shouted as he punched his desk to his right, and a little note came flying down off the edge of the desk. Elijah relaxed his hand and stared up at the note as he watched it flitter down to the floor. It landed right in front of him. Without hesitation, he picked it up and unfolded the paper, revealing a letter. "Dear Elijah, we have never really formally met, though your father and I shared a close professional bond during the foundation and years of InGen. As my own mortality rapidly approaches, I am left to contemplate the vast architecture of my life's work. The world will undoubtedly look back and judge me through a lens of narrow mortality, labeling my ambition as arrogance. They lack the capacity to understand that science does not stop to negotiate with fear. I have no heirs and no trust left in corporate entities. Therefore, I am bequeathing my entire financial estate and the unredacted truth within these folders strictly to you. The secrets cannot be destroyed, nor can they be left to the blind public. You alone hold the legacy of my creation now, Elijah. I trust that you possess the strength of will to decide what becomes of it. Dr. Henry Wu." Elijah held the letter in his hands and folded each corner of the paper angrily, like a twitch. He placed it onto the desk and stared out into the window. The sun gleamed through the windows sharply, and Elijah stared out as the sun slipped beyond the horizon. As he pondered what to do now, "I now have the ability to decide the fate of Wu's legacy, something I probably would have wanted beforehand, to erase these fake monsters that have reigned this earth for over a decade. But now, with the ability to make change, I now see the horizon ahead, as the dawn of a new era begins."